showtime. Welcome to the show. I'm Brent Holland, and welcome one and all to Night Fright. Folks, get the coffee going, get the tea going, get a beverage of your choice going. If the kids are around, bring them in the room. You know how I always say for certain shows, get them out of the room? Not this show, folks. I want the kids in the room for this show. You are going to appreciate our guest tonight. His name is Mr. Abraham Bolden. He is a real hero, a real living hero. He was the first African-American Secret Service agent handpicked by John Kennedy himself to be on his Secret Service detail. He was not on duty that day, but he was a whistleblower after the assassination on Secret Service ineptitude. Indeed, he had been warning all along that the Secret Service was consistently drunk, consistently bringing women into the rooms while they were on the road with the president and were in no condition to guard the president, because when you guard the president, you've got to be razor sharp. And in no way were these guys razor sharp. You're going to hear his true story, how he went from the depths of hell to elation, if you will.
Suppose you know what's going on down in Mississippi, Mr. Bolden.
Yes, sir, I do.
Well, I certainly want Meredith to be enrolled, but it means him getting killed or any of these other students. I'm just, hell, I'm not prepared.
You don't have to explain anything to me, sir.
I grew up in a bit of an ivory tower. I don't think I met a Negro until I was in college. Took certain things for granted, because, well, they didn't affect me.
Learning new ways takes time, Mr. President. It takes time.
Mr. Bolden.
Yes, sir.
Can you help me out of this chair?
Yes, sir.
This is going to be one inspiring story, folks. Don't miss it. Settle in, get ready, strap in, and hang on. Here we go.
There is a time to question. There is a time for answers. There is a time to challenge. There is a time to speculate. There is a time for change. There is a time for truth. The time is now. Welcome to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Welcome, one and all, folks. Welcome. My name's Brent Holland. Welcome to Night Fright. Tonight, folks, an extremely, extremely special guest. His name is Abraham Bolden. He was the first African-American Secret Service agent, handpicked by John F. Kennedy himself. His book is called The Echo from Dealey, Plaza. Easy way to get it, as always, folks, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book cover. That'll take you right to a spot where you can order the book from the comfort of your own home. Now, this is part 2 of 2. For those of you that joined us in the first part, I'm just going to do a quick recap. And for those of you that are just joining us brand new for this second show, I'll just give you a quick recap. Mr. Bolden, as I said at the outset, was not on duty November 22nd, 1963, as the president was assassinated. Prior to the assassination, Mr. Bolden on JFK's Secret Service team had been telling the Secret Service chief about drunken Secret Service agents bringing their prostitutes back to the rooms with them. They were in no condition, folks. It was lackadaisical. It was kind of like a fraternity party, as I like to say, for these Secret Service agents. I guess a good analogy is just several weeks ago now, President Obama had the same type of thing happen, and we're going to get to that tonight too, where he had to dismiss his Secret Service staff that was on the road with him because they were drunk and bringing prostitutes back to the room with them. Disgusting in this day and age. We're going to end up with another dead president. I mean, the reason why we listen to history and study history is so these things can't happen again. And by God, they're happening all over again. Where we left off last time, Mr. Bolden had been set up by the Secret Service to silence him coming forward to the Warren Commission. Now, we all know the Warren Commission was that commission that was set up right after the assassination of President Kennedy to investigate the assassination. Mr. Bolden came forward to tell his side of the story about the Secret Service's ineptness that day. And the Secret Service found out, and they put together a diabolical scheme to silence him. Let's go to that now, sir. What happened? We had left off when the jury had just left the courtroom in order to bring back a verdict, whether you were guilty or not guilty, sir. Can we pick it up there?
Yes, that's right. Now, what happened is this. That jury did not find me guilty. There was a lady on the jury who happened to be a Negro, and she said that she went to Channel 7 here, ABC Network in Chicago, and told them that I sat through the whole trial, and it's a made-up thing. So anybody can see that. And that's why I voted not guilty, because has nothing to do with the boy's color or anything like that. The government just failed to prove anything against that young man. And I appreciate that. Her name was Miss Anna B. Hightower. Now, I had a second trial, Brent. Now, the fact of the matter is that the same judge who had told the jury his opinion that I was guilty was the judge in the second trial. He would not dismiss himself from being the trial judge of another trial. All right, now this time, I was tried by a jury that was all white. They were all European. But now, and that was schemed. There was no question in my mind what was going on, because the woman who had voted not guilty was black. So the assistant United States attorney went to one of the Chicago American newspapers and says, if we hadn't had that Negro woman on the jury, we would have gotten a conviction. Well, guess what? The next one, there were no Negroes. Well, now, during the second trial, when the jury came to deliberate, at approximately 5:30 p.m., and that was on August 11th of 1964. The judge came from his chambers and told my lawyer and everybody, said that, I'm tired, I'm going to close the courtroom. I'm going to go home and get some sleep. And says that I'm going to release the jury, and if the jury comes to a decision before 9 o'clock in the morning, in other words, they were going to start deliberating at 7. If they come to a decision, then it would be sealed, you see. But the judge locked my attorney, me, my sister, and all of the people other than government officials and employees out of the court building. He put us outside on the sidewalk and had the guard to lock the door. And he was inside with the jury, the Secret Service was inside with the jury, FBI was inside with the jury, and the defendant and my attorney and everybody who wanted to witness the trial were put out of the courtroom. Well, that jury returned a verdict of guilt.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise. I later found out that the judge had made statements to that jury also concerning my being guilty.
So, sir, just to interrupt you. So here's this judge in your first trial where you're found not guilty, had instructed that jury basically to find you guilty. And because of one Negro woman, as you say, one African American woman, who's had the courage to stand up and say, no, Mr. Bolden is innocent. You were found innocent. But the same judge is presiding over your second trial as well. Now, this is bizarre. And this time, of course, he gets the verdict that he wanted all along. Now, shouldn't this have sent off a red flag to the upper echelons in the legal system, that there was something afoot here, something very, very ugly going on?
Well, I think it did, but I think that the higher authority, and when I say higher authority, I mean straight out of Washington, D.C., they wanted me silenced at any cost. Yes, they wanted me silenced at any cost, because the Secret Service was, number one, they were denying that the agents were guilty of misconduct. They were denying that there was any drinking going on around the president, and they were just denying everything. As a matter of fact, they were denying it for the last 50 years. And so now it comes out at this particular time, and it confirms everything that I had been saying for all of these years, where they had been calling me a liar. As a matter of fact, in Blaine's book, the Secret Service detail, he
Kennedy
refers
detail.
the Kennedy detail. In his book. And he says about the falsehoods that I had said against the Secret Service and how diligent that they were. Well, that went up in smoke a couple of weeks ago. Well, now, I knew how the government operated. I had heard things and had read things about the government, how that one of the witnesses in the Dealey Solestis case, who had some very important evidence against one of our presidents, was sent to St. Elizabeth, and how they tried to declare her insane at St. Elizabeth in order to keep her from telling what she knew about Dealey Solestis' relationship with President Johnson. And that's stuck in my mind. You see, all right. Now, first thing that I did after my conviction, knowing how some people in the government work, I hired an attorney in Washington, D.C. and in Springfield, Missouri. These are the two places where that type of activity goes on, and I knew it. In the meantime, one of the witnesses, Joseph Spagnoli, who was on trial himself now for counterfeiting, told this same judge who had heard two trials against me that he committed perjury in my trial, and that perjury was committed at the behest of the assistant prosecutor and the U.S. attorney of the Northern District of Illinois, Ed Hanrahan. He admitted that to the judge. When the case went to the Court of Appeals, we were arguing the case in October of 1965 before the United States Court of Appeals, 7th Circuit. The chief judge of the Court of Appeals during the argument called the Assistant United States Attorney, Richard Sykes, before and asked him point blank, says, did you solicit perjured testimony in the Bolden trial? He asked him that 3 times. Sykes first he-hawed around and said, well, Your Honor, let me explain this and that. The chief judge said, that answer can be yes or no. Did you solicit perjury in the Bolden trials? Sykes stood there and said, Your Honor, I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that my answer may tend to incriminate me. And the Court of Appeals upheld conviction, regardless of the fact that the United States Attorney and the Assistant United States Attorney refused to answer a question as to whether or not they had told these witnesses what to say in the Bolden trial. And I went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, of course, they refused to hear the case. And on June the 26th of 1966, I was shuffled off to prison.
Now, Mr. Bolden, I think it was Attorney General Katzenbach, if I'm not mistaken, was the Attorney General at that point, 1964?
Yes, he was. He was an acting Attorney General. That's right.
Now, what's really weird about this is Katzenbach, as far as I remember, was a Bobby Kennedy guy. He seemed to be a decent guy. Now, why did he not step forward and blow a whistle and say, what are you doing to this guy? This is disgusting, absolutely outrageous.
You know, I asked myself the same question until I found out through the Mayor Farrell website.
Yes, sir.
That Katzenbach, during the reign of the Warren Commission, had written a memo as the United States Attorney General to the members of the Warren Commission, saying that Lee Harvey Oswald had to be the only shooter and the murderer of President Kennedy.
Katzenbach has that. That's explosive, sir.
Yes, that's right. So now here, I just found that out. I didn't know that such a memo existed until I began to do some research myself. Now, Honorable Mark Lane knew about the memo, I'm sure, because Mark Lane had contacted me, and we had talked a couple of times, and it was largely due to Mark Lane keeping a focus on my case while that I was locked up in prison that somewhat made them hold back a little bit in doing what they wanted to do to me. Now, here's what happened. They sent me first to Terre Haute, Indiana. The second place that they sent me was Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The third place they sent me was to Springfield. Now, at Springfield, Missouri Medical Center, there are actually four prisons in one. You have a hospital there for inmates who need medical attention. You have a camp there. Now, the camp takes care of the hospital, keep it clean, serve the meals and things like that. Those are inmates. They have the psychiatric ward there, and they also have other research equipment there. Now, when they put me in the federal institution at Springfield, Missouri, I knew what was up. I knew that they had sent me there in order to try to declare me insane. But I had already hired an attorney before that I went there for that purpose, that if I ever went into the Springfield jurisdiction, that he would be my attorney, and his name was Attorney John Hausman. And so I retained him just for that purpose, sort of getting in front of this thing, so to speak. But that didn't stop him. So I came into a confrontation with one of the mental patients there, a man who was sent there for treatment for taking a baseball bat and cracking the skull of another inmate in Lompoc, Arizona, over a ball and a strike. And so they sent this person, Kenny, to Springfield and declared him a P number, which is saying he was there for mental treatment. Now, Kenny was working in the same cafeteria, the office of cafeteria that I was working in. One day, for some reason, he went off. And I was washing dishes doing my job, and Kenny showed up at the door with a 12-inch butcher knife. And he accused me of harassing him, of taking his mop bucket, a mop bucket. Now, he's ready to kill me about a mop bucket. And I told him, I said, if this is your mop bucket, I knew it was not his mop bucket. I said, you can have it. No, he says, you've been effing with me. Now, in the meantime, the head of the kitchen, the supervisor, comes in, and he tells me to drop the scalding hot water that I had picked up to protect myself with, and not saying anything to Kenny about the knife. I said, you take that knife away from Kenny and I will drop this bucket of water. You see, that was my protection. But anyway, they took me before the warden, and then from the warden, they sent me to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist accused me of making up lies against the Secret Service, making up lies against the court, and said I was sociopathic and schizophrenic. The next thing I know, I'm lying in bed on July the 7th, 1967. And two guards approached my bed, tapped me on the back with a flashlight and told me to follow them. And they took me from the prison camp where I was stationed, where I had been stationed, took me over to the psychiatric ward, registered me in the psychiatric ward, took my clothing away from me, put me in a cell, and forced me to take mind-altering drugs. This is what happened to me. I know it sounds difficult, it sounds very strange, this coming from an American citizen in America here who espouses such a democratic form of government.
You know, sir, and that's what I wanted to ask you as well is, you know, here you are, an innocent man. You've been thrown in prison unjustly, completely unjustly. The fix was in. It was so obvious to even a novice like me that doesn't know much about the law. It was so obvious that you were thrown and set up and thrown in jail because of it. Now they're trying to give you psychotropic drugs. They're trying to declare you insane. How did you keep your wits about you and not believe the crap that they were trying to shove down your throat? Like somebody tells you, a psychiatrist tells you you're schizophrenic. How do you say, my God, they're out of their minds? I'm not the one that's schizophrenic. They're the ones that are crazy.
Yes, right. Well, to tell you the truth, I just submitted myself, you might say. Now, Mark Lane, again, I give him credit, because when he found out that through John Houseman that they had picked me up and put me in a psychiatric ward, he happened to be in Chicago. And he made an issue out of that to some of the news papers here and some of the news forces here, the media, and it got back to Springfield, Illinois. And so that sort of moderated some of the plans that they had put in effect in order to declare me insane. But they still continued to hold me in 2-1-Es for the psychiatric inmates, forcing me to take these psychotropic drugs. Now, I had to find out how to defeat this.
Sir, can I just interrupt you? I just want to tell folks who Mark Lane is. Folks, Mark Lane was, best way to put it, he's an attorney. He's going to be on this show actually in a few weeks. He's an attorney that was also JFK's, he was responsible for his New York part of his election campaign, and he's been in and around the JFK assassination since the beginning. Many people say he's the grandfather of the assassination research. He wrote a book called Rush to Judgment. He released a movie called Rush to Judgment. He also wrote a screenplay called Executive Action, which is all about the Kennedy assassination in the 70s. That was the first movie, JFK, if you will. Just to give you a brief synopsis, that's Mark Lane. He lots and lots of stuff. He's a survivor of Jonestown. He represented AIM, the American Indian Movement, at Wounded Knee in 1973. An incredible man, and I'm anxious to have him on. But I just wanted to let folks know, Mr. Bolden, who Mark Lane was.
Yeah.
Now so you're back in the psychiatric ward.
Yes, right. So my first thing that I had to do was defeat this medication that they were trying to put into me. And I described in The Echo from Dealey, Plaza, my book, how I went about doing that.
What happened? You had some visions while you were in prison, sir. I was wondering if we could talk about those a little bit.
Absolutely, yes. That
Thank
was
you,
one
sir.
of the high points. That was one of the high points.
And folks, and if the kids are out of the room, I want them to come in and hear this because this is essential. The book is called The Echo from Dealey Plaza. Our guest tonight, Mr. Abraham Bolden, an American hero, a true hero for everybody. www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book cover. That'll take you right to a spot where you can order this book from your armchair, from the comfort of your own home. Sir, thank you.
All right. Now, to tell you, Brent, I have been a religious person all of my life. I believe in the supremacy of God. I really do. Deep down in my heart, I have always believed that. After I had spent about 10 days in that solitary confinement, it was getting to me because I'm somewhat claustrophobic. But I couldn't let the administrators know that, because it was a very, very, very difficult time for me. I thought about many things. But I happened to be sitting on my bunk one night, and I went to sleep. And in my room, all of a sudden, I heard a noise as if someone were flickering a cigarette light. It only happened once, and I saw a little spark in the corner of my room. Now, mind you, I'm laying in pitch darkness. The lights were out. And then all of a sudden, a light began to shine. And when this light began to glow, it lit up the whole room. I could see the whole room. And from that light, an image appeared. The image of the head of a man or a woman. I couldn't tell whether it was either. It was as if it was a shadow. And the first thing it did was ask me my name, and I said, Abraham. And then it telepathically asked me. There was no outspoken word, but it was from mind to mind. Asked me how many children did I have. And I answered 3. And this voice, which voice was as clear as running water, told me not to be afraid, that God was with me. Told me not to be afraid. And you know what happened? Now, I was at my maximum limit. I sat on the side of the bed and I prayed. I thought maybe I might be slipping. I said, maybe the drugs took effect and I didn't know it. Maybe I have gone insane. I just couldn't explain it. And lo and behold, I finally fell asleep. Well, the next morning, I wanted to get out of that cell so bad. I had been in there 10 days, just locked up, cut off from everything. All of a sudden, I hear these bells ring that same morning. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning now, the sun's up. I hear bells ringing and the guards are running back and forth. And one of the guards said to the other one, there's a fire in the cell next to Bolden. And the other guard said, can't be, so there's no one in that cell. That cell is vacant. And the other guard answered and said, well, the whole room is on fire. So the chief guard says, well, get Bolden out of his cell, and they brought me out. And from that time on, I was allowed to go in and eat with those patients there. I was allowed to socialize with them. I was allowed to leave that cell. And what a relief. It felt like, Brent, it felt like I had made parole. Now, it may seem strange. Here's a man that is locked up in prison and locked up so tight that when he gets an opportunity to go out and associate with those who are less fortunate, who have been declared insane, psychotic, who have killed people. One of the men there that was there that I associated with, I actually saw him with my eyes kill another inmate. I saw him, I witnessed it on the elevator. He stabbed the inmate to death. And when I went out in the population, he recognized me. This man's name was James Robinson. He recognized me as the one who had witnessed him kill another inmate. And we had a conversation. And we sat there and we ate dinner together. Now that's how they did me. They put me in there with these guys now to declare me insane. Now, normally they keep you in that type of condition for about 30 days. Now they moved me to what they call C building, where you have a little bit more freedom, but not much. They still have you purportedly on medication. And I understood from Exendine, who was an Indian, who took care of the radios in around the institution, he made out a false order so that he could come in and warn me that Mr. Julius Nicholas, who was the chief of classification and parole, had recommended that they change my status from a camp inmate and give me a P number for psychotic. This is what the chief of classification and parole. And I was scheduled to go before that committee on that Friday, which would have been somewhere around August the 3rd of 1967. All right, now I had another vision while I was in C Unit. And that same light came into the cell that I was in. Now, to show you how hard that vision, that cell is on people, there were 2 inmates there who committed suicide while I was there in C Unit. That's how difficult it is to maintain yourself there. They committed suicide. One stuck his head in the toilet and inhaled as much water as he could and drowned himself. Another one beat his head up against the bars until that was just it. Now, what? So I had this vision, and the light, the same light came, this light brighter than the sun, and then it died away and left the figure of a pendulum, like a pendulum on a clock, swinging back and forth. And this was on a Wednesday night. So here I am again, having this vision. So Friday morning comes. 2 guards come and they take me down. Now they're taking me before the committee to declare me insane. I was scheduled to go there. I went into this little room, sat behind a mahogany desk, and to my surprise, Mr. Gronska, who was deputy superintendent of the inmates there, says, well, Bolden, we're sending you back to the camp today. And I was shocked because I had been alerted that I was going before the committee to be declared insane. So he said, Mr. Gronska says, now pack up your things, the little things that you have in the cell, and go back to the camp. So I went back to the cell, escorted by a guard, and I went back to the camp. And as the men saw me walking back into the camp, they said, man, we wondered what happened to you. I said, well, you know, they took me before the committee. I said, Julius, yeah. They said, yeah, we heard about that. I said, but they didn't do anything. He said, man, Julius Nichols is dead. I said, Julius Nichols, the chief of classification and parole. And Brent, let me tell you what happened. The day before he was supposed to sign the papers to declare me insane, he went home. Now, this is a day after I had the vision of the pendulum swinging back and forth. He went home, had an argument with his wife. He shot his wife in her leg As she ran down the street, she ran into one of her friends' houses. He tried to get into the house. They wouldn't let him in. He ran back home. It's the chief of the classification and parole who's saying I'm insane. He ran home, went down in his basement, threw a rope over some of the pipes in his basement, stood on a crate, tied the rope around his neck, and committed suicide. That's why they could not have the hearing that would have declared me insane, because he was not there to sign any commitment paper.
Divine intervention.
Divine intervention, twice.
Wow. Folks, Abraham Bolden, aren't you glad you brought the kids in for that? Isn't that an incredible story? The book is called The Echo from Dealey Plaza. Of course, he's the first African-American Secret Service agent handpicked by John F. Kennedy himself. He was a whistleblower after the assassination on Secret Service ineptness. They were drunken folks most of the time. They were not able to protect the president, as was very evident November 22nd, 1963. You can see in the Zapruder film, you can see in most of the photos there, the shots ring out, and nobody from the Secret Service moves to protect the president. They are all dumbfounded because they're all hungover. They're all dopey. They're haven't been to bed, most of them. They're still hungover. It's warm out, and you know when you're in a situation like that, you just don't react properly. So Mr. Bolden blew the whistle on these guys. He had blown the whistle beforehand, and no action was taken. A good validation that it's still going on. But 3-4 weeks ago, President Obama had to release his Secret Service team while he was on the road for the same dereliction of duty. They were drunk. They were bringing women back to their rooms. They were in no condition at all to protect the president. Now, people will say, well, they were off duty. When you're on the road with the president, you have to be available 24/7. You have to be ready to make an intervention at any time. You are not allowed to drink. There is no time off when you're on the road. You're allowed to sleep, of course. They do have shifts, but there's no time off for pleasure or anything like that. Mr. Abraham Bolden is our guest tonight. www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book cover. That'll take you right to a spot where you can order this book from the comfort of your own home.
Mrs. Kennedy shouldn't be too long, sir.
Thank you.
General, the president meant a lot to me, sir, and I will miss him for the rest of my life.
He cared for you a great deal, Abraham.
Excuse me, sir.
Sir, how did you get out of prison in the end? That was it. You were out on parole?
Yes, I made parole on September the 25th of 1969. Now, the thing behind that was that I only had about 90 days to go before I would have completed the whole sentence. In other words, on a 6-year sentence, I would have had to have done 4 years flat. So what they did, they kept me all the way up until 4 months before I would have completed the sentence with no probation or parole or anything. And by them letting me out on parole, that meant that I had to do 2 more years on parole, you see. So they, in fact, by letting me out on parole, elongated the time that I would be under the government's jurisdiction.
November 22nd, 1963, sir. Where were you that day? I know you weren't on duty. What were you doing that day, sir?
Yes, I was in Chicago, and I happened to have been working on a check case, a co-ed check case at 37th and Indiana here in Chicago. And I was taking handwriting from one of the people who were employed at a tavern where a forged check had been cashed. And they had the little round black and white TVs back during those days. And I heard an announcement about noontime on CBS television that the president had been shot. And I knew right away that the president was probably dead. And I knew that the Secret Service did not react. And that was long before the Zapruder film or any of those things came out. I knew what happened. All right, now, so I rushed back to the office as fast as I could. And one of the agents was walking back and forth saying, and not me this time, saying, I knew those playboys were going to get the president killed. Now, this was other than me.
Did you know any of the men on the detail that day, the Secret Service detail?
Yes, that was my shift. The shift that was behind the president would have been the shift that I was on, would have been the agents that I was with.
Okay, let's go there, sir. If you were on that shift that day, you're in the car, perhaps standing on the one of the boards on the car, the Secret Service car, was right behind the president's car, folks. The shot rings out. What would you have done, sir?
I would have done the exact same thing that Clint Hill did. See, it's the duty of the Secret Service not to determine where a shot came from or who's shooting or anything like that. Their duty in that follow-up call behind the president is to cover the president with their bodies. Now, if it turns out that someone would explode a cherry bomb, firecracker or something, so be it. Better safe than sorry. But their duty was, when they heard an explosion, to cover the president. Now, that goes whether he wanted to be covered or not. You understand that is entirely in the hands of the Secret Service. Congress gave them that duty and obligation. The American people gave them that duty and obligation. And that is what they were supposed to follow. It was not the duty of the Secret Service to look around and see where the sound was coming from, to look to the right or to the left, or whether or not a bullet or whatever was happening. When they heard the sound of an explosion, they were to do exactly what Clint Hill did. And that is to get up off their feet and head for the back of that limousine and protect the president of the United States. That's what I would have done.
Absolutely. And, sir, would you have taken that bullet for the president?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. And people say, well, how do you know? Because, Brent, I have given 50 years of my life fighting to bring justice and the truth out about who assassinated our president, who did such an awful deed at noontime, a bright sunny day on a Friday afternoon, who had the ability, the motive, the gall to do such a heinous deed. See, those people need to be found out. Those records that are in our archives should be released, because since that time, America has been on a downhill slide ever since. And I think that whoever assassinated the president knew that removing Kennedy from the presidency of the United States would serve a greater purpose. And I think that that purpose now is being revealed in this day and in this time, where we are losing our civil and constitutional rights in this country, and we're being taken over by a group of people who does not have the welfare of the United States at heart.
Folks, Abraham Bolden, aren't you glad you brought the kids in? When was the last time, folks, when was the last time you heard somebody speak like Mr. Bolden just spoke, with true integrity and patriotism? It's been a long time, hasn't it? A long time. Aren't you glad the kids got to hear someone like Mr. Bolden? Pretty impressive, isn't it? The book is called The Echo from Dealey Plaza, folks. Easy way to get this book, www.nightfrightshow.com. Click on tonight's guest book cover. It'll take you right to a place where you can order this book from the comfort of your own home. You know, I asked Mr. Bolden if he would have taken that fateful bullet and given his life for the president. In effect, he has done that, folks, as he just reiterated. 50 years of his life, the hell he went through. his family went through. He was just a young man, don't forget, when he was thrust in, right into that penitentiary and all those evil things that happened to him. And yet he's come out and he's inspiring as all get out. I just love this guy. He's an amazing man. Just an honor to have him on the show tonight. Mr. Bolden, where does your case stand now, sir?
Well, right now, we're getting ready to make a movie. And the script, as a matter of fact, is supposed to be finished tomorrow. And we have to get the producer, the normal channels we have to do. And I have, as a matter of fact, Mark Lane is one of the people who are working on bringing this tragedy before the public. And I just want it to be successful because our young people need to know what the history is. And I hope that it will play a part in having those files on the Kennedy assassination released so that we can put that part of our history to rest. Because this country is going to be divided until that happens. Because you have people who live in that day and in that time. A government exists because the people trust it. If the people do not trust the government, then that government cannot survive. You see what is happening right now in Egypt, in Libya, in all sorts of places. And I'm not saying that everything, that we're innocent or anything in what is going on in some of those countries. We're contributing to some of that confusion that's going on over there. But we have to understand that trust in your government is one of the main factors that sustain a democracy. If you don't have the trust in the government, you have no democracy because we are the government. We, the people of the United States of America, we are the government.
That's
and
right.
So we must maintain that trust. We must maintain that orderly, that order of the cosmos must be within us in order that we can move forward and be that number one nation that we were meant to be.
Sir, any political aspirations after listening to you speak for the past 2 hours?
No, I'm a little I'm a little old for that now, and arthritis. I've had 3 heart attacks now. I've had 2 serious back operations and cancer. I just got over cancer last year, and it's been rough, and it's all the deterioration of the body. But I tell you one thing, Brent, I haven't given up on good. I haven't given up on God, and I haven't given up on the people of America, all the people of the world. We're going to come through this. We're going to solve these problems, and brotherhood is going to reign. Believe me.
Absolutely, sir. I couldn't be more in agreement with anyone than what you just said. Sir, we had alluded to Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, and the danger he's in right now. I had just discussed the fact that his Secret Service team had been released several weeks ago because they were drunk, bringing prostitutes in. Do you fear for his life? I had asked you that in the first show. You said yes. What would you recommend to Barack Obama in order to protect himself better, besides you coming back in service?
Well, I don't know if I could come back in service or not. It's a good thought, and I probably would accept a consultant role. The first thing that I would do, Brent, seriously, there is a test that is given to psychologists, and that test is called a pupillometry test. And what it does, they measure the dilation and the contraction of the pupil. Now that is controlled by your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. When a person sees something that they like, the pupils open up, they dilate. When he sees something that he doesn't like, then they restrict, they contract. I would suggest that all of the agents that are immediately around the president take this test by a certified psychologist. to find out what is deep within them, because it's very critical. That first second that something happens, your attitude towards who you're protecting is critical. And if there is someone there who is wearing a badge, but they really don't like this guy, they really don't like black people, they really don't like tall people, they really don't like mixed breed people, they need to be found out and removed from that detail. Another thing that has to happen too, the Secret Service has to mean what they said. Don't try to cover up things. They're trying to cover this thing up right now. They have all sorts of agents on MSNBC. They're all around and they're talking about, well, it never happened when I was there. And they're just getting all sorts of false testimony. That's the wrong route to take. The Secret Service have to be taught about the fundamentals of espionage, how spies work, how they probe for weakness in a system, and how simply because nothing happened on this occasion does not mean that information was not gathered to be used on another occasion. See, you have to know the ins and outs of how spies work and how double spies work. Now, what happened in Colombia was very, very serious. Why? Because it involved the advance agents. These are the men who know everything about the president's movement because they set it up. They know who is where, when, what car the president's going to be in, what time, if there's any tricks to be played, if the president is going to be in car number 3 instead of the Beast or his normal car. They know that, and that's in a written report. You understand? So it was critical. I mean, for an agent to become junked and leave his computer open and leave a person in a room while he's off somewhere. And in these ages of technology, there are certain microchips can be slipped into a computer, and from then on, the information on that computer belongs to whoever put the microchip in there. And we still don't know whether or not the security was compromised. We still don't know if something was said or done in that room. We still don't know the background of those prostitutes. And even if you think that you know the background of them, you still are not sure.
That's right. There's always going to be that reigning question mark, isn't there?
It's going to be that question mark.
Yep.
And I'm very concerned about President Obama's safety, and I hope he's not overconfident. But I will say this, that if it does happen, I pray that it doesn't happen on American soil. I just pray it does.
God forbid something like that ever happens again and leaves another family without a father.
Happens again for his wife's sake, his children. He has a beautiful family.
He sure does.
And I think he's doing an admirable job. I think if given, that's just my own opinion. I'm not trying to politicize it or to tell anybody else how to go, but my own opinion, if he's given another term in order to straighten this country out, straighten America out, I think that the people will be more appreciative of what he's going to accomplish. Of course,
Sir, any speculation on your part who killed President Kennedy? Do you believe it was a conspiracy?
Yes, that positively was a conspiracy. I have no question about that. Because in my estimation, and from listening to the agents who were on site at the time and having been privy to some of the early conversations that were taking place shortly after the president was assassinated, the headshot came from the front and not the rear. That all of the agents who were riding anywhere near the president says that bullet came from the front, somewhere near that picket fence area.
Yes, sir.
You see, that was the opinion until the Warren Commission was appointed, and then things started got jumbled up there, and all of a sudden, Oswald, who just was a marksman, qualified as a marksman, could get off 3 shots in 6 seconds on an old raggedy rifle. Now, I never believed that. I'll never believe it. There was a conspiracy to assassinate our president, and I believe that the reason was this, is that the Kennedys were doing some things that affected people in high office. That's number one. He was doing some things that affected the survival of the CIA. He was doing some things that were affecting the monetary system. And what they wanted to do was make sure that a dynasty of Kennedy in the White House not happen, because you would have had John Kennedy, after him Robert Kennedy, then you had the other Kennedy,
Teddy.
right, Ted Kennedy, and then a host of grandkids. Then you got John, and now forever. And it could happen. And you know, this country was found to get away from dynasties and have freedom and out from under the reign of the Catholic hierarchy.
That's right. Folks, our guest tonight has been Abraham Bolden. The book is The Echo from Dealey Plaza, the first African-American Secret Service agent on JFK's detail, handpicked by JFK himself, was not on duty that day, folks. And as he's just reiterated, he would have taken that fatal shot. He would have taken it. And indeed, folks, he has given his life over the past 50 years to President Kennedy, who he swore to protect and swore to protect the Constitution as well. And by standing up against all those adversities to this day, folks, he could have just rolled over and said, okay, enough is enough. He does not. And that's why I wanted your kids in the show, in the room to watch this show tonight, to be inspired by this man, because these are, I feel, the qualities in a human being that are sorely lacking in our leaders today. And I think that's much to our detriment, and I'm glad you enjoyed the show. The book again, Echo from Dealey Plaza, www.nightfrightshow.com. Mr. Bolden, is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I would just like to say that I'm hopeful that other Secret Service agents, now that this has come to fore, will come and bring the truth before the American people. And why? In order that they can contribute something to solve the problems of the protection of our presidents. Now, they can put their heads together and come up with a solution to many problems that the current agents are facing. They should do that for the sake of the American people. They should offer their suggestions, put their minds together, talk with Sullivan. Stop trying to cover up. Bring everything to light. It doesn't have to be made public, but bring everything so that the chief of the Secret Service, Sullivan, can make rational changes within the service. He needs the information. He doesn't need people to agree or to hold back or afraid that they're going to cross the thin blue line. He needs ex-agents now more than ever. And the truth needs to come out concerning the assassination of our president so that we can guard against it, and it'll never happen again on the streets of America.
Amen, sir. Amen to that. Thank you again, Abraham Bolden, folks. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright. See you next time.
Thank you, Abraham.
You're listening to Night Fright and your host, Brent Holland. The time is now. Your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio.